How do you generate new brain cells to spark connections as you age? Ask Dr. Gay Hanna, and she'll tell you that stimulating activities keep you active and your brain alert. Learn how she translated her work with creativity expert Dr. Cohen, and forged new possibilities in the arts and humanities, on this episode of Pause for Purpose.
This is just a thrill to invite Dr. Gay Hanna. She's known to many of us on this call from all her work in creativity, the humanities, arts, health, aging, and where the whole thing intersects. And it's part of what I think is fascinating about her work is where generativity and across generations and then the individual health benefits all add in together. And where you find that connection between all of it is really where her work has been, as we've just been talking for the first 10 minutes or so, for decades. So add her work now with what was done by Gene Cohen, the famous Gene Cohen, who defined and wrote about the creative age, and then add Susan Pearlstein and NCCA, the National Center for Creative Aging. So we could spend the hour literally talking about Gay's accolades over the decades, and yet suffice it to say, she's now in the Washington, D.C. area and is teaching at both Georgetown and George Mason universities, blending her talents in expanded and innovative undertakings that always involve the creative element. And so with that as introduction, we're going to go right into just a few questions, and then Gay, you take off and lead the discussion wherever we go. So start back though, just for starters' sake, tell us briefly about those early years. Like, where did you grow up, schooling? Was the whole creative element always part of your life, even as a younger woman? And you go back then, because a lot of us don't know that part. And then you can pick up where the professional life takes over.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And thank you, Vicki. We were just talking about how the circle remains unbroken. And from decades past, to be on the path with these marvelous pioneers has been one of the joys in my life. So again, I'm humbled to be here and so glad to share with you the experiences that I've been so fortunate to have. And I'm very much interested in hearing about all of your work and your thoughts. So truly the best part for me is our time when we can talk together. So I'll try to be concise with my answers and to give you a little bit of background, but also, again, to illuminate, I think, what all of us go through. And some of us are just much more privileged in the way we start off, and I certainly was. I actually grew up in my grandmother's home, and it was a little house in Norfolk, Virginia, but it had 3 pianos. She was a music teacher, and my job was to entertain 36 music students most every week. So I can't truly imagine a home without the arts. And so from that start, although not gifted in piano, as hard as my grandmother tried, believe me, I did fall in love with the visual arts. And it happened, my great-grandmother collected rocks. And we were probably the only house in Norfolk, Virginia that had a mountain of stones, because it's all sand there. So my passion in arts is actually carving stones. And that's what I've been doing since the 70s. So that's the early years. And somehow from that point on, I became enamored with healthcare and did coursework in nursing. But when it came to working in a hospital, to be quite honest, the smells and the look, and people would ask me, oh, you're going off of shift now. And I'd say, no, I'm just coming on, because I would look so trained. So I figured out pretty soon that that was not my path, and then went on to study sculpture and get a Master of Fine Arts. And I worked as an artist for 8 years in the landscape business. So specifically, my background is as a fountain maker. And so we can call it Fountains of Youth or whatever you'd like to, but that is my passion in the arts, to be sure.
Can you gave for us fast forward to your years as Executive Director of the National Center for Creative Aging? Tell us about the work you did there. What were like some of the highlights of that experience and opportunity?
Well, for some reason, I was able to work from being a stone carver fountain maker to teaching in a nature science center that led me to try to get a teaching certificate. And from there, at that time, such marvelous people were working, such as Jean Cohen and Susan Pearlstein. And so they encouraged me to start the Florida Center for Creative Aging. And in a couple of years, Susan Pearlstein decided to move NCCA to Washington to be close to Jean Cohen's Center on Aging, Health, and Humanities at George Washington University. And it was my great fortune to be tapped to help her make that move. And at that time, Dr. Cohen had just finished his research, was the first research to really use what they call a control experimental group. And he was able to prove substantially that engagement in the arts really helped us maintain and build health, even at an advanced age. And he did this through several groups, through several arts organizations. And it was just astounding. It was, as he said, a little study that roared. And since then, the studies have just poured out. And now the National Institutes of Health and the Kennedy Center are doing broad-based studies based really, in fact, on Jean Cohen's early work that show how the brain's plasticity actually changes with the participation and engagement of the arts, specifically with music.
So when you talk about creativity and aging, and you talk specifically about music, what is it about music that it transcends, I don't know whether it's happy thoughts or memorable thoughts or past thoughts? What is it about music that is a connecting thread to healthy aging?
Well, music in particularly, and I would advocate all of you, and I'll send links. The program is called Sound Health, and now it's morphed into a national organization, and it's funded by NIH. It is really populated by researchers that are neuroscientists. And it's led off, believe it or not, by Renee Fleming. Have you guys heard of this? You can. In any case, they even put Renee Fleming in a CAT scanner and they had her sing and they watched her brain light up. And then they asked her to think about singing. And which do you think made her brain light up the most? And when I say light up, that means that all the parts of her brain were working. The electrodes were firing off. And that is just like doing push-ups for your brain. And in fact, Jean Cohen would say that creativity is chocolate for your brain. Because especially as we get older, our brain has capacity that truly no one recognized until the 1980s that we can grow new brain cells. New brain cells. Remember, we were told in the 60s and the 50s that our brains, we were born with these cells in our brain and take care of them because you're not getting any more. Well, actually, that's not true. The dendrites keep sprouting, and engagement, especially in the music, comes from a part of the brain that is so deep and intrinsic for us as human beings. So did you know that actually when someone has a stroke, they can teach this person as they recover to sing quicker than to speak? It is so deep within us. The arts nourish our brains. They nourish our brains. And as Jean Cohen, who was a geriatric psychiatrist, shared with us, our brain is divided, as you know, into two halves. And from the research he did with others at NIA, he saw that older brains, because of life experience and engagement, tend to start firing on both sides. So if you're like me, I started life more oriented the right side of my brain, which is the arts, the growing. The left side is more like my husband, the mathematician, physicist. When we age, he would say, Jean Cohen, it's not despite age, it's because of age that actually our brains can become more creative. And often people describe this from ancient times as being, we become wise. We become wise if we listen to ourselves, if we keep ourselves active. And even if I can't run that long distance marathon, there is nothing keeping me from having my brain work hard on a drawing, painting, song, cooking, gardening, anything else that is creative. And again, to be sure, we're talking about the broadest creativity, which is, as Rollo May said, creativity is creating something new of value. And I think it's important to note that what we're talking about certainly includes what we call, the big C creativity. That's our Jonas Salks, that's our Michelangelos. But what we all can do is keep that little c active in our life all the time. And that is finding new ways to do things, finding our passion, our interest. And I think too, especially as I'm at the time of life, which I have the opportunity to do teaching, that to pass on what you've learned, to build and help and create and give new tools to the next generation is just so extremely important.
So then it's true for men after 50, they discover their creative side and their feminine side. Is that connected to aging, creativity that men get, who's like your husband, the physicist?
Well, he also sings opera. So he's kept that going. But again, you'll find so many in the medical community very passionate about music and other art forms. So I do think that you're absolutely right. As this brain, as Jean Cohen would say, it is on all-wheel drive as we age, as we especially, I think too often we're undervaluing our life experiences. And even though things have changed so rapidly, the core life experiences of learning new things, sharing them, of knowing that when things look very dark and bad, that there's a brighter side, and it will come to pass, is extremely important.
So describe, you have a young Kim with you, who's your teaching assistant. So tell us a little about your courses that you teach, and like, what are some of the lessons that you want your master's students to come out with?
Well, look, I'm so glad to see Kim, that is here today with me. She just received her master's from the program Aging and Health at Georgetown University. And again, as I was mentioning, this program is built holistically, looking and hoping to prepare students to be leaders. There's 3 tracks in senior living, in policy, and economics, that they truly avoid the stereotypes of aging that is not acceptable, and they combat ageism, and that that we have a chance to really explore what does it mean to be aging. What does longevity mean in this contemporary society that we have? And how can we build structures that will support the flourishing of life all the way across the spectrum? So my course, which I'm just so thrilled to teach, is Humanities and Ethics of Aging. And I'll tell you, the humanities do incorporate ethics. They're the great umbrella. They incorporate the arts, religion, history. But what is so fascinating, and I think I'm learning more than the students in this course, is contemporary humanities are now the nexus for problem solving. So we love art and theater and for their intrinsic beauty and values. And that's been true since ancient times. But in the 1960s, when we had so many revolutions in thinking, civil rights, and of course we had the great Panthers then as well, and we really started seeing that we were going to live longer, healthier lives. The humanities have really been taken to be used by other fields. So you are seeing humanities used in medical schools. Every medical school has a humanities program to be sure that doctors look at the whole person, not just at the symptoms that a person has. So this course and this master's is very person-centered. And to that end, what I was seeing is that we really need to see aging through the lens of an older person. The classes, our students are actually very intergenerational. I have a student that must be in her late 60s as well as a student that's in her early 20s. But the core of this class is they create an avatar. And I give them the profile of the avatars. They select the profile. And then this avatar, which is really not the computer avatar per se, but what the Indian spiritualist would say is a divine being that comes to light to give you wisdom. So the avatars go side by side with each student, and they go through 3 iterations. Is this too much detail? Or
no, keep going.
And the 3 iterations are around the critical times in the life of an older person. First of all, the iteration is changing activities. So they retire. How do they maintain their identity? What sort of services are important to them? How can they use the time they now have to embrace activity that they couldn't do with it when they were raising children and working. So each student explores their avatar, which they're all from different ethnicities, they have different economics. Because when I first did this last year, everybody created an avatar of their grandmother or grandparent, which was very good. They could understand. But we wanted to really talk about the social determinants of health. So how much is in our control? How much is in the control of the environment to which we're born and influenced? And then the next iteration really talks about we go from activities to changing where we live, because most of us have to think about, are we living the right place for our later years? Is it got 3 flights of stairs? Does it have services so I can go to the grocery store without having too much trouble? And then the final iteration is to develop advanced directives and think about your legacy. So that's been a core tool throughout this course, and we are finding that it really helps the students bring the literature to life. So everything they're reading, all the speakers that they hear, we have a speaker, an expert every night talking on different topics relevant to moving across the lifespan. And then we also hold a debate on a global issue, such as we just held a debate on the distribution of vaccines. Should they go to the most at risk, which is majority older people, or the other side is, should they go to people who have more life years, who can work more? And it's a global issue, and you can see it varies country by country.
When you create these avatars and you have the students in the class, what percentage of your students, what's the ratio of men to women, boys, young men to women? And is there a difference between the avatar that a male student would create versus a female?
Well, at this point, we're pretty heavily weighted towards the female student. In the class I teach, it's 6 students, and we have 1 who is male and also creates absolutely the same avatar as the women. It's very interesting, and that was true last year, and how I've done it in different classes. And that is why I think it's important to do, because when we have something else we're creating, we are able to project beyond ourselves. So it does demand that we think in new ways. And that's going to be a very important way to move forward for this generation.
So you now are in the Hanna era. Describe what research has revealed about art services supporting lifelong health and well-being.
Well, thank you for asking about Hanna Merrill. I tell you the truth, that was supposed to be a sculpture making business. My husband gave me 10,000 pounds of marble. We went to Italy, we shipped it back. It's in the driveway. But what happened, as soon as I retired, I was getting these offers and these contracts, and we had our accountant look and say, do you think that we can take the contracts for doing work in arts and health and arts and aging into a sculpture business? And he said, sure. And we could never, maybe that's one of the wonderful things about the arts. They're so elastic. So I'm sorry to say I haven't carved a lot of that marble, but I have been very busy and enjoying working with groups such as grant makers in the arts, that they want to train their grant makers how to fund aging projects, how to fund arts projects. And for them to do that, as you all might know, many of the funders are very, very concentrated on funding programs to support children from K-12. And then there are other special projects. But with the huge demographics of people aging and the opportunities, especially in the arts, for arts organizations to serve this group that wants to finally learn how to paint and sculpt and dance, and also the power of it to be applied to giving caregivers respite. The research is phenomenal on the arts and people that have dementia, the arts, that people that have Parkinson's disease. So I act in Hanna Merrill as a consultant that helps people pull the pieces together so they can retool wherever they are in the grants, or such as MedStar. They are retooling so that they can do more work, more research in the arts. And so it's just been fabulous to just not seek this. And I think it speaks to why your group is so important, is that if you have a purpose and you're open, I just have been flabbergasted how much has come, and I haven't had to print a brochure, or I try to do social media, but as Joyce and Vicki can tell you, I'm kind of hard to find because I don't have much time to even do that. So Hanna Merrill is really responsive to the needs of groups that really want to broaden their services, to enrich their services. And it's been extremely wonderful to be a part of that.
You said MedStar Philanthropies Group. What is MedStar Philanthropies Group? That's part of one of your consulting contracts, right?
Right. And MedStar owns 6, maybe 8 hospitals. And what we're finding is arts and health is just so important in the hospital setting, and hospitals, as well as long-term care and continuing care communities. They have to go beyond just the basic clinical safety services. And spaces in hospitals need to be beautiful for healing to take place. And nurses and doctors need to move and stretch. And something beautiful in an infusion room where you're getting chemotherapy really helps that go so much better. So my job there was really to help give efficacy to the procedures and having artists at the bedside. Georgetown is a MedStar hospital, and it has a 30-year-old artist at the bedside program. So part of my job was to build research around what they did, what they do. And the pandemic even showed how important they were. The artists were some of the first people called back into work, and they were called in before people could go to work. And I'm sure we'll touch upon it, but the silver lining of the pandemic is really the growth of online services, which really caused us to be released from the fear of not having transportation. And so many of them are free, that also makes it so much accessible to people that really couldn't afford to go to the National Gallery and, be part of a paid program. They could do something free, but now the National Gallery just booms across the world. And that's, again, I can be in Virginia, I can see a wonderful program like I did last night, a playwriting program that took place in LA. So it's phenomenal what we are able to pull together at this time.
What are some of your future projects at Hanna Merrill? What kind of projects would you, that you're not doing, that you'd like to be doing?
I think I got to carve that stone or we might have marital trouble. So,
what is that stone in your mind going to look like?
Well, I'm working on design. So I am a fountain maker. And so I intend to return to especially doing works that are around liturgies, like I've done baptismal fonts and things like that. So I'm looking forward to spending more time in the studio, but I don't think I'm ready to just let that go before I write some books and continue to teaching, because as I said, I had no clue that what I had learned in 35 years of being in the world with Gene Cohen and Susan Pearlstein would be valuable for me to transition to other people, other students. I feel like I'm a bumblebee just going around, trying to pollinate here and there. So I certainly will continue that work.
So you say there's a book inside you or several books inside you?
I think I've got at least a couple of books. I just think that the humanities and ethics of aging, it is just so huge. And Carl Jung talked about that creativity and spirituality goes across a lifespan, and it does not change with age. It's enhanced with age. And I'm also just feel like we all on this call, we have got to work so hard to be sure that we strike a balance between safety and autonomy. And when we talk about the losses of aging, a lot of them surround the losses of being autonomous. So we need to really, really look at are restrictions necessary? I just heard a wonderful speaker last night talk about how there's a group of people coming together, I think it's called Compassionate Caregivers, that were actually locked. Their loved one was locked in a nursing home or a continuing care community during the pandemic. And some of them actually applied and got jobs as dishwashers or anything so that they could still see their loved ones that they knew were frail and they were going to lose without being in personal contact with. And they are galvanizing to really be policymakers. And I think we're going to see some great change come from that. I think, again, we are shaking off, centuries of thinking of older people as weak, frail, not useful, unproductive. That is really, something that is a failed concept and a wasteful concept. Does not matter if a person is in dementia, there is so much humor, there is so much we can still do together to enjoy life together. So we're really, really, as Gene Cohen and Susan Pearlstein and you all, we have got to crash down those artificial barriers and get to the other side and change the paradigm. And if we don't do it, who does it? I'm glad Yoon and her colleagues, they're going to do it. And I don't think I see the ageism in this group. And we are starting, my dearest dream is by the end of this century, the isms we will have wiped out. There's no need for racism, ageism, sexism. You can just go down the line. They're only characteristics of not being creative. because creativity can surmount any of the barriers in a positive way. Yeah. And creativity, it never, ever ends. It doesn't. It's there with us all.
So
absolutely.
Before we...
Oh, two things. I would love to hear from you and Kim, given what Gay has shared, what your perspectives are as being, you know, the next generation looking at this whole topic. Would love to hear from what you have to say. And also, Gay, you mentioned something, and you and Kim might have something to say about this. You mentioned having students from their 20s through their 60s. From an intergenerational perspective, are they collaborating on projects? And I know the COVID environment, it's probably in a Zoom or a social distance role, but I just wonder what's happening intergenerationally in your courses, and would love to hear what you and Kim has to say about all of this.
Yeah, I can speak to that, the intergenerational group that we have. I mean, one thing that is amazing about this program is because we have different people coming in from all stages of life. People just from their undergrad, as well as people in their later life and in midlife as well as myself, I am. And that can kind of bring in a lot of different experiences and the different perspectives, which gives us a lot to discuss about. And of course, we engage in different projects and school projects as well as outside of school, I think, right now, which is very intergenerational. I started my internship. I did my summer internship with Age Friendly DC, which is an initiative started by the World Health Organization to promote kind of age-friendly cities and communities where people of all ages can grow older, like happily engaged and connected and healthy. So during that internship, I did a project, research project on the effect of reducing social isolation and loneliness in older adults using technologies. And for that project, I needed the methodology I was using. We needed many people in the research team for that. And we had 5 people in our team. And we had people from, I think the youngest one, he was in his 20s, maybe early or mid 20s. And also, one of my preceptor was, I think she's in her later life, maybe 60s, I don't know exact age, but we had people like in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, as well as 20s. So that was very interesting. And I think that kind of different perspectives is very important in tackling most of the issues we have around aging. And also this program, we had people from different ages as well as different backgrounds, actually. I have background in finance and counseling psychology, and we have some people coming from journalism, some people with law degree, finance, nursing, theater as well. So that gives us a lot of kind of different perspectives, which makes the issue of aging, tackling that issue very, very useful, I think. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Kay, do you have a comment on what Yoon said?
I just tell you, there is no age in the class. It just seems everybody pitches in, works together, is respectful, and it is just very heartening to see. And I think it bodes well, and that's why, again, the humanities used as a nexus, used as a tool, an interdisciplinary tool, is just the way of the future. Because humanities, you know, it's a study of being human. And in our class, we're studying what it means to be an older human. So it truly, we are living the world we hope will expand.
So before we turn it open to questions, I want to ask you, probably both of you, to comment on, given your wealth of experience, can you provide tips on the ways that we can blend the arts into our lives, regardless of our age, if we never learn to play the piano?
Well, again, I think the pandemic has caused the arts groups, all of them, to pivot to online courses. And so I have a friend who has a music store right on Connecticut Avenue, and she gives wonderful talks about older people learning how to play the piano, the saxophone, etc. She says they come up to me and they get very, very close and they kind of whisper in my ear, do you think that I can learn to play piano? So there's always kind of this little embarrassment, can you do it? And more people are, and now you can actually try it out through Zoom or through an online class. So the ability to engage and participate in the arts is just huge. You had on the list some mentors. Liz Lerman's one of my great mentors. She's a MacArthur Fellow, and she started dancing with older people after her mother died when she was quite young. And then she kept dancing with older people. And now her group, Dance Exchange, has a huge program called Dance On. And every Thursday, any of you can join that dance class and they'll be having a festival. But it's just one of thousands of opportunities where, just a mere couple of years ago, it would be difficult to find a dance class, a drawing class, things like that.
And would you care to comment on, what you would say would be ways that we can blend the arts into our lives, even as young as you are?
I'm not an expert on arts and humanities, but I think one way could be promoting more arts participation. You don't really have to engage in art activities, but you can go to, I think, museums, go to theater and watch movies and go to concerts. That would be another way of blending art into our lives. And also, I think having more interdisciplinary courses or programs such as this one. Through this Humanities and Ethics of Aging course, I have learned a lot in terms of having different guest lecturers come in from different dance exchange, learning about how dance and how music or arts can be combined into lives, even in the older ages as well. So having these kind of interdisciplinary approaches, I think, would be helpful.
All right. I'm going to now, it's time to open it up for anyone who would like to ask Gay or Yun any questions that they might have that can help us all age well, wisely, and ethically, and artistically, and creatively. Any questions? Sandy Timmerman.
Hi, sorry I was late. I rushed home to get here, Gay, and I'm so excited to
see you.
I know. I've been thinking back on just the beginning of the whole movement, the historic perspective, and the work of Gene Cohen, who really brought us to a completely different level, and people should read his books. They're really important. And I'm so glad you're carrying on the work. But I had a question about the National Center for Creative Aging. You're doing that type of work now, but will it ever open again? And then Susan Pearlstein, who is so committed to this idea before anybody even thought of it. And she came to the American Society on Aging and she said, we've got to do this. And she was so passionate and she was such a leader. So I'm just sort of thinking back on the past and how we reactivate this again. I think it's happening through your work and others, but there was so much attention to it. So maybe you can just comment on past and present and what's happened to Susan and
I would love to. And it is the National Center for Creative Aging. We just had a marvelous time, but we were also a very, very small nonprofit. And so as funding structures changed, it became important for us to partner with larger organizations. So I would say if you look at Aroha Philanthropies, they really picked up the mantle, and they are doing a lot of things that the National Center of Creative Aging used to do. And I was just part of a launching of a creative aging initiative in New Jersey that was actually funded by Aroha, and it's the State Arts Council and the State Department of Aging. And for 3 years, they're going to train artists that work in education to work in different other senior services. So Susan, to comment on her last time, I think I communicated with her on her birthday, which is August 25th. And she, her husband, they inherited almost a mountain up in the right near, oh gosh, it's in the Berkshires. And she has developed it into an artist colony. So I think she's still doing classes there. And I think she, like most, it is so tiring to run small nonprofits. Believe me, I can attest. So she's enjoying participating in the arts as several other groups that have transitioned from their organizations to working more as individuals. But I will note Cohen's wife, Wendy Miller, she finished the books that she was writing with Gene when he passed away. And I would highly advocate, if you haven't read it, she wrote, I might have a copy here, Sky Over Clouds. I don't think I can find it in the library, but it really illustrates a stage of life that, we can be swamped by the clouds, but like a Georgia O'Keeffe painting, she did beautiful series of being in airplanes flying over clouds, and she was terrified to fly. So she didn't fly until she was much older. But when she did, her breath was taken away with the beauty of those clouds. And so that's truly a metaphor that Gene and Wendy use to address using creativity to break out of the clouds, to get above them. And it really is important to my life, to be sure. But I believe you can reach out to Susan, and you surely can reach out to Wendy.
What a great title. I think that's makes
Isn't
me realize it.
What's the title again?
It's called Sky Over Clouds.
Wow, that is a great title. I mean, it gives you a visual right away of thinking. Yeah.
Going above.
Yeah. When I meditate, I sit on a cloud.
There you go. Yes.
When I can. Anyone else have a question?
I'll ask another one. Do you think that arts have been more mainstreamed in the aging field now than they were 10, 15 years ago? It seems to me there is more attention to it as part of the grouping of healthy aging, and that creativity seems to be part of it. But I wonder if you think we're on a good trajectory here with arts and aging.
I do. I see that truly that participation in the arts, art education is really starting to be lifelong instead of just K-12. We're recognizing that. So you see more programs at museums. I think for the senior living community, they are now hiring more life enrichment people with art skills than activity directors. we have a long way to go, but I've seen some big changes and expansions. And when you think of NCCA and Elders Share the Arts, we were like catalysts. So our job was to go to ASA and prod people to turn and look at this as a resource. And that's why we're seeing like state arts agencies really put money into funding it, training artists. And so I think truly we've come a long way.
It's great. And Tracy, I believe you had a question.
Yes. I have a parent that lives in a memory care community. And during the pandemic, I know that the activity director tried to do, who was kind of an external employee, tried to do some work through the like online and Zoom, and that didn't really go over well. And I think their activity director eventually left. So my question is there a way to reach out in your home state? Is there an organization of people who who are activity directors for memory care facilities? Is there some kind of that organization that we can connect to learn more about services that could be brought into a specific memory care facility?
Yes, and I would say that it depends on your location, how easy that would be. Where is your mother located?
We're in Connecticut.
And Connecticut has a great arts council, great state arts council. Okay. So you can check the Arts Council to see if they do know of any arts organizations that are serving memory care. Like in Washington, D.C., we have an absolute wonderful one called Arts for the Aging. And they have been able to pivot and make that transition. But it does take the organization that a senior living facility has got to invest in training of their staff to know how to use equipment with their residents. And again, Ann Basting's program, Time Slips, I just looked at that. One of the students in our class is a Time Slips facilitator. And once again, I was just staggered by how effective it was, even over Zoom. I saw this one woman who was, I guess, isolated in her home. And she just looked like she was just totally disconnected. And through the telling the story and using her imagination and the music and the movement, she was dancing by the end of this hour. It really brought tears to my eyes because it's not hard. It's using human-to-human contact just by inventing stories, by dancing, by hearing music, by sharing and echoing what other people are saying. So truly, you could look to see who accredits that senior living facility. If it's a nonprofit, they might be part of Leading Age. And if it is a for-profit, they change your name and I can't quite think about it. But those organizations also help provide training so more services can happen. But that is still huge work to do, huge work to make those links. We've got spots where it's gangbusters with people in the arts in those settings, but then we've got deserts.
Okay. I just went on Time Slip's website. It's really terrific.
Yes, Time Slips. Believe it or not.
It's a funny name, but it really is, really focused on what you're talking about.
It's amazing. And a state like North Dakota, believe it or not, has an extensive program in the arts. And, they have a small enough population that they've designed programs and CDs. The Arts Council has the is in every one of their senior living facilities.
Eileen has a question.
Hi.
Just want to unmute. Thank you for doing this, and thank you, Vicki and Joyce, for having you as a guest. This is fantastic. I have a lot of enthusiasm for the arts and what you're doing. And I have a question for you, and maybe you've come across maybe a similar type of question. I have a lot of enthusiasm for this, and I understand the value of it, and you speak to it so well. I wonder how it might be possible to help shift a person's perspective about the arts and the value of it. And I have a couple of people in my mind as I ask you these questions that are working in financial areas. And as they grew up, they didn't see the value of art. And I made some different suggestions, different studies, talked about the creativity age and Gene Cohen and all the things that are happening now and what might be out there. I wonder what you would suggest so that it kind of shifts them and opens up the possibility of the enrichment of the arts to their lives.
Well, surely if they are you talking about them as individual people or as leaders in an aging facility serving older people? Because they're different approaches for each.
Yeah, I'm speaking about individuals that and I don't want it to overgeneralize, but it is my finding with the financial world that they may not understand the true value of it, and I don't mean to overgeneralize. It just is what I'm finding in my experience, and I was wondering how, because I work with financial planners, and so I'm wondering how to shift it to show the value of it. And I've, like I mentioned before, some of the things that I've done.
Well, they're persuasive arguments, you know, from if you're trying to promote your product, such as a senior living facility. It was amazing at NCCA. I got lots of calls from marketing people because they found if they marketed that they had high quality arts or they were connected to high quality arts. And in fact, at Georgetown, we are working with the Mather, which Mather's out of Chicago, which has done wonderful things with the arts, and they have studios in all of their living facilities. There are records that show that if a place does have a way for people to be creative and independent, that they will be able to attract the clientele that they want. In terms of an individual, again, it comes back to the shyness of not having ever done it. So if there can be a safe place where the person can experience making art or participating in the arts, a lot of times people that are financial need to see a program. So like there's wonderful programs in museums for caregivers and people with memory loss, or just Ann Basting's website will blow you away. So finding examples that speak for themselves, and a lot of the groups like the Alzheimer's Poetry Project, they even have research that's part of how they promote their products. So again, you can point to NIH's huge sound health program because they're starting to pump millions of dollars into research in the arts and tie it to how it can help resolve some clinical issues. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, Sandy Timmerman, you work with financial planners and are kind of on the creative blending. Do you have some suggestions that you've maybe written about?
No, I never thought really of connections to the arts. It's giving me some ideas. But they're facing a number of clients who are transitioning into retirement. And a lot of the people were very busy executives, and they feel lost because they don't have an activity that really resonates with them. And I keep thinking of someone like George Bush, who took up painting. And,
True.
How do you make somebody who felt like he was king of the world satisfied in retirement? And it's just an interesting idea, Eileen, to really focus a bit on how the arts might really open up a new side of creativity.
Margaret, you had a question.
Well, an observation. I think if we follow the money for independent senior living, I think that the population coming in wants to see how their life is going to get enriched, and it's going to take a lot more than granite countertops to persuade them that their life will be improved if they move to congregant living. So I think the communities that are able to say, we have a real quality of life here that is enriching, are going to be getting more move-ins. The ones that are still emphasizing bricks and mortar are not going to be as successful. And I think, so ironically, it may not be because research says people do better. It may be because the organizations are going to find that financially they're doing better when they are more innovative in their enrichment.
Okay. Barbara.
So first of all, thank you for a wonderful presentation. And also we have a fellow Life Planning Network member, Fred Mandel, who has created a program after many years of research using the arts to help corporate leaders think more creatively, improve their problem solving and innovation skills.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's using all forms of art, drawing, music, etc. So if you haven't connected with him, I think that would be really interesting. And hopefully he will be on the program that you're going to do for us.
What's his name?
Fred Mandel.
Fred Mandel.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I already reached out to him about connecting you two. So it's a logical, it's just a logical next step.
Yeah, and he's talking about solving big problems, including world problems, using the arts. So
I think his program is Futures That Work, something of that sort. He and his colleague.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what we've been talking about. The arts are wonderful intrinsically, but they're being used instrumentally. I think the thing that's concerning to me is, and I concur with is it Margaret?
Margaret, rhymes with Target.
Margaret's comment, follow the money, because the high-end places, they've got studios, artists, they've got what is called maker spaces. Have you heard about them? And those maker spaces are popping up everywhere for all ages, where people really want to make stuff, not just sit in front of a computer and such. But where we're seeing the disadvantage, and when I was at NCCA, I had a heartbreaking conversation with an old foundation in Detroit, which was serving communities that lacked a lot of resources. And the director was trying to figure out, they had money, but he said he just couldn't expand his criteria to fund arts above housing, food, and medicine, when you know that the person needs more than that to really flourish as a human being. And we've had that too in HUD funding, where we couldn't really have money released into doing programs and activities where people could share their stories, their expertise. But I see the corner turning, and I always point to the Maslow pyramid. We want to move us from just the baseline of that to help everybody get actualized. And again, that rolls back to us, fighting that big fight of not accepting restrictions, and to really make sure civil rights apply right across the line, no matter who you are or what you have.
Meg Newhouse, you joined us.
Yes, good to see you.
I think you're muted. You're muted, Meg.
I was in another meeting I couldn't get out of, Elders Action Network. But I was just starting to write about Fred and thinking that that if he gets these business people, even in for instrumental reasons, that they will discover the intrinsic value of art.
I believe that, yes.
I hope so. This whole society needs to discover that. I'm so sorry I missed most of your talk.
It is so good to see your face, all of you.
Yeah.
Meg, it's recorded, so you can always listen to it later.
I will, for sure.
All right, we are at the 5:11 time. I would love to thank
both Gay and Yoon Kim.
Yes, for sharing these wonderful examples of your wisdom and experience of how important the arts are in helping everyone age creatively and wisely and in an enriched manner. So thank you very much for the gift of your presence today, both of you. And Yoon, I want to ask you, what do you want? What kind of job do you hope to land?
Oh, I want to do more research in aging and health issues. So I think I'll be starting a PhD program this fall. Yeah, so I'll be doing some more studying and then doing more research. Maybe it can to back up like inform policies and maybe public against attitudes about aging and ageism and things like that. So,
do we need you?
Could I just ask what PhD program?
I haven't decided yet, but I think Virginia Commonwealth University has a health-related sciences PhD program with a concentration in gerontology. So I'm considering that one, but I haven't decided yet. Yes.
Fabulous.
Great. Okay, so we are coming to the close of this wonderful Pause for Purpose Wednesday afternoon session. For those of you that have to leave, we excuse you, we will miss you. But before we close, Joyce, tell us what's coming up next week.
We have the privilege of having a gentleman, his name is Dick Haydick. As a matter of fact, Susie Van Wickle is what she was on, is a friend of his, and it's really through Susie that we learned about. Dick Haydick is a longtime IBM executive, 39 years, and transitioned and is an avid bicyclist. He cycles about 3,000 miles a year, and has written a book called Shifting Gears. It has nothing to do with cycling, but it is about interviews with over 75 people who are just doing fascinating things. And the chapters are great. If you're not a heavy duty reader, each chapter is about 3 or 4 pages. So they're just quick vignettes about these folks, where they came, what they're doing, the lessons learned along the way, etc. It just came out, a book called Shifting Gears, and Dick is going to be with us to share some of the vignettes, some of the stories. And so he will be with us next week.
So we have a question that we want to ask you all. With COVID and people having their shots, and there's now a kind of desire to burst out of isolation, to connect, to get together with families for summer vacations, to fly off somewhere, to just be together in person, as opposed to in front of a computer where you see one another, where you're dressed from here down, but you have no idea what's happening below. You know, when I was at ABC, one of the jobs was to make our anchors look human. And so Peter Jennings was our broadcast person from Canada. Oh, and of course, it's right after Walter Cronkite and the high rating CBS had. And so the question was, how do you make him more human, more American? Because this is a boat and Prestus and all that kind of stuff. So I decided that when you see news people, you never see their legs. So let's have him sit on a stool, or let's have him wear something more casual. So we got to see the whole of Peter Jennings, as opposed to just from here up. Anyway, that's a dissect. But Joyce and I had a conversation about what is the likelihood that we'll have a peel off effect during the summer of who wants to sit in front of a computer on a beautiful July 15th day, when you could be out on your deck, out at the beach with your family. So we're just thinking ahead a little bit, and we need your thoughts. If we then took maybe and did a special, a pause for purpose special, say at least during the months of mid-June into just before Labor Day, that we weren't doing this every Wednesday, but we took a theme that seemed to be a timely topic, and we brought it to your attention, and we maybe did it once a month, as opposed to having, so it's not taking a summer hiatus, but it's being respectful of the burst out that everybody seems to be going to. So does anybody have any thoughts on that? What your thoughts are? What are you doing this summer? Go ahead, Meg Newhouse.
I think it's a very good idea, actually.
You do?
We are traveling for a grandson's graduation, and up to Maine, just for, getaway. And I just think it would be a good idea to reduce the number.
Do you think once a month?
I think
or 2 times a month?
I would just say for July and August anyway, once.
Gary Solomonson, nice of you to join us. You escaped, you got away from your meetings.
I did. I ended it early.
Yeah, and you look different. Obviously you're in your business look.
I'm at Connie's, so I have to clean up my act a little bit. So.
Okay. I'm going to call into her today. Okay. All right. Anyone else have a comment about if we reduce the number in the summer, at least July and August? Go ahead, Tracy.
Tracy, what do you think? Carol, what do you think? Yeah, Tracy, you're on.
I liked Meg's suggestion. There's so much value to seeing each other every week and a new topic, but who knows what we're going to get to do this summer. That's right. And let's explore that. But I don't want to lose anything with my future purpose. So even if we did once a month, something in June and something in July and maybe something in August, and then we get back into full swing.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
On this Josephine, I guess I'm leaning towards twice a month would be good for me.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I think you set a schedule to do like first and third Wednesday every month, so that otherwise you're going to get 1,000 phone calls on, okay, what week was it again? So I think initially I would go with like first and third. I would go for twice a month too for this group.
Okay.
I think it's offered a great deal to a lot of people. And so if somebody can't make the first, maybe they'll feel still connected to My Future Purpose if they make the third week.
Perfect.
Good idea. Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Andy, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. I was going to say once a month, but maybe you're right, because you can't always make that one day. I know for me, I find it hard at 4 o'clock because the day is so long now, daylight savings time. So I don't like to, I was out walking and I thought, oh no, I'm not going to get back. So I've sort of like the idea of a morning or maybe 5 rather than 4, but that may be just me. So yes, for less frequency, but not to lose the momentum. And I do have to go now, but this has been a great program. Thanks for asking for the feedback.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, Gay.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
This was wonderful. And as always, Vicki and I hang out at the bar. So BYO beverage, and feel free to join us for a few minutes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck to you.
It was great meeting you.
Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Thank you
me.
so much.
Thank you so much, Gay.